Nobody's listening, so we're going the next step. And we aim to show that fish farms in British Columbia are unconstitutional, unlawful, and invalid. Do you have any questions?
How do you plan to do that?
Back in 1988, the federal government and the provincial government passed a memorandum of understanding. Basically, Department of Fisheries and Oceans said there's no impact from fish farms, therefore the province could regulate them. We think that the oceans should be regulated by the federal government and not the provincial government.
How successful do you think you'll be, considering the fact that you don't have the DFO on your side?
I'd like to turn that question over to my lawyer, Greg McDade.
Here's the material we filed today in court. Here's the material we filed today in court. What was the question?
How successful will you be, considering the fact that the DFO is not on your side?
That's why we're in court. The federal power over oceans and fisheries goes right back to 1867 in the BNA Act. It's one of the most powerful federal responsibilities there is. It's been in court even a century ago, decided that. So we think that there's a very strong chance of success in this, and that's why we're turning to the courts, is because DFO has basically abdicated their responsibility over the fish.
What actually happened today, and where does it go from here?
Today, a petition was filed in BC Supreme Court challenging the constitutional jurisdiction of the province to regulate aquaculture, challenging their whole licensing scheme. So this is now filed. It'll be heard by the court probably in a few months, 2 or 3 months, and a judge will decide whether the provincial legislation is valid or whether this should be something that DFO regulates.
So if you won,
the province would be out of the business of aquaculture, and DFO would have to regulate the health of the wild salmon inside and outside the fish farms.
Would you mind just outlining what's the key issue? Like, why have you taken this action? Where has the province come up short?
Well, I think that's something Alex should answer. In our view, the province has really dropped the ball in regulating fish farms. They don't have any responsibility to protect wild salmon, and they regulate that way.
How are the wild salmon?
The wild salmon are suffering. They're in exceptional decline wherever there's fish farms worldwide. This is not just about sea lice. There's bacterial and viral problems as well. Fish farms are feedlots. And we know with the birds, you're not to let the wild birds fly into bird farms and then continue north. You spread pathogens. It's the same situation with the fish farms, except this isn't a human health issue. This is a wild salmon issue. So the wild salmon are in exceptional decline wherever there's fish farms. The province has made it very clear that they are not able to deal with this. And so that's why we're taking this step.
What happened to your plans to medevac or fly past the salmon farms?
When I asked to medevac the young wild salmon around the farms to prevent them from getting sea lice and other pathogens, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada said no, that I might damage the fish. But some senior scientists within DFO actually thought it was not a bad idea. But if they had allowed me to do that, then they would have been admitting there was a problem with these farms. So they said no, and those fish remain by the farms right now.
There's a great irony in the fact that DFO claimed the right to stop Alex from protecting the young juvenile fish, but they don't claim any right to stop the source of the sea lice in the fish farms. So where's DFO's power? They have power over individual citizens, but they claim no power over the cause of the problem.
Who's behind this action today, and how are you going to get the list?
This is Brian Gunn from the Wilderness Tourism Association. So he is a co-petitioner with me and the Pacific Coast Wild Salmon Society and the Area E Gill Netters and the Vessels Owners Association. The money for this, the majority has been raised by people across the Northern Hemisphere through www.adoptafry.org, individual donations.
What are you expecting the minister's reaction to this to be?
If I was was Minister Pat Bell, I would say, feds, you can have this. Because this is really impacting their government. This is going to bring politicians down. If they don't pay attention to our wild fish and notice what's going on and deal with these farms, they're going to be the big losers.
Why would you expect DFO to do anything different than managing fish farms than the provincial government? Since they already have the authority to protect wild salmon, that's their job.
I don't expect they will do anything differently. This will be a chain of legal actions. Once we get this whole mess under one roof, we'll go and clean up that mess.
So you take action against DFO?
Failure to enact the precautionary principle, failure to enact their Oceans Act. There's a whole number of regulatory measures that they will then be subject to. But right now, everybody's saying it's not my job.
If I could just say that from the tourism point of view, we desperately need a diversified economy, and especially on the North Island where I'm from and where the farms are all located. And so we have to say that we want the farms there, but we want them to be sustainable, and we want them not to impact on the wild salmon, because right now the impact on the wild salmon is threatening the livelihood of our members who fish for sports fishing or who take people for wildlife viewing. The wildlife, I think, as you all know, are dependent on the salmon, the bears, the eagles, and that's what really concerns us. So we're hoping that this action will help move this forward. I'm aware that there are concerns expressed inside government, and we're being told action is being taken, and we'll be hearing something soon. Negotiations are going on with a great many groups, but nothing has happened yet in the Broughton.
What are your operators actually seeing as proof that the salmon farms are causing harm?
What they're seeing is a great diminishment in the salmon in the areas of the Broughton and along the coast. Now, that can't all be blamed on the farms, but they see when they go out there, because they live there, they go out and they go out with Alex and they see the fry, and they see them being killed by the lice. These tiny little fish are just being totally decimated. The lice are in the mouths and the eyeballs and so on, and that's happening in the past. It's happened in the millions. What's happened in the last little while is they've been heavily slicing the fish, much more than they ever have. And they're down to probably averages of about 0.08 sea lice per farm salmon. If you work through all the numbers of the number of farmed salmon in the area, do the multiplication, you're still talking about 10 million lice, inoculi. And that's the problem. They get on the little babies and they don't survive.
Would that not be Minister's reaction when you were turned down to medevac the fry that more slice be used?
Yes, Minister Bell said just apply more drugs, and we already know that any parasite that you continuously expose to drugs becomes resistant. Slice, the drug they're using right now, is not even approved for use in the marine environment. I would like to know what drug Minister Bell is going to use next, and do we know what this drug is doing to the seafloor and to the other creatures?
And was there not a report the other day linking the salmon farms to the decline of the Fraser fishery?
Yes, that's work that I did with some commercial fishermen around Campbell River. We went down there to study pinks and chums, but we found so many sea lice on the young sockeye smolts that we're going to see in 2005, and that was the age class that never came home last fall. Closed the entire south coast fishery to sockeye, no commercial fishing. We also found sea lice on young of the year herring from Georgia Strait herring. That's the bottom of the food chain. This is very, very serious.
So that's the report that has really got our operators concerned, because that report and hearing from operators in the Clayoquot, in Nootka and Quatsino along the Sunshine Coast, they're seeing similar things. But there's no research there. There's just the farms doing their lice counts and not releasing the data. We need Alexander Morton type research done on the whole coast where there are farms, so we can see what's happening. Because it's not being done, it leads to our fear that we're facing the end of wild salmon on the coast of BC, where there's farms, which will greatly impact our industry.
And